ahead, Josh.
All right. Anyhow, I just want to thank everybody for coming here today. My name is Josh Eisen, and I am running for U.S. Senate to face Kirsten Gillibrand next fall. I am a resident of Westchester, New York. I live in Harrison. I'm a father of 3 kids, and I'm very aware of a lot of the challenges and the pain that exists in our city. I've spent a lot of time driving around the areas where I live, other parts of the state, and there's quite a bit of pain and challenge that just goes unaddressed. Kirsten Gillibrand has been there for many, many years, and I think it's time now for there to be a different approach to how we deal with business, regulation, and ultimately it's about how we think about communities and big government. And I am from the camp of people who strongly believes that big government should be always questioned, and I have a lot of ideas about why, and I think government right now has to incentivize and empower communities to be stronger and to do all the things that communities traditionally do and do in most of the world, that here in the United States, for whatever reasons, many people rely on government for things that are traditionally provided for by family, community, and we need to make those things stronger. I'm happy to answer specific questions. I'll give one example of an area where I think government is totally overreached. I know out here there's a lot of concern about energy prices, about inflation, and all these issues and all these problems are a direct result of just overreach in government regulation. The government wants to come in now and tell towns that they're going to control your zoning. The government already came in and told you can't hook up new gas lines, you can't do this. They're going to soon come in and try and ram down their ideas about what energy is down the throats of the people who live in counties like Erie, and I plan to stand up to that. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them about my background, education, and I'm happy to also, in the age of George Santos, provide a comprehensive background check that will verify my education, employment, finances, everything else.
Speaking of George Santos, you ran for Congress, failed to get the nod of the Republican Party. How is that different in a run for the Senate?
It's a different set of circumstances. I ran in Westchester, which right now is very factionalized and internecine kind of warfare there, and I backed out like a gentleman. There were 2 other people running. It wasn't like I was pushed out. I could have stayed in. It was a primary. It was not a complicated race to run. Ultimately, I did decide to run as an independent because I felt that the Republican nominee wasn't strong enough, and I just felt that somebody did need to stand up and articulate just certain ideas about small government and about the danger of large government and the importance of empowering communities.
Would you run as an independent for Senate if the Republican Party didn't endorse you?
I don't think I would run. If I don't win the primary, right now there's no other candidate running, and I'm a realistic person. I'm somewhat deferential. Nobody really wants this race. If I were to lose a primary, I don't think I would run. I think it's a different situation. Right now, my goal is to get the nomination, run the primary or not if there isn't one, and really develop the policies and ultimately have the legislation ready to go should I win the election. And some things don't even require legislation. There are issues out there that can be handled under existing law, and sadly they aren't. If you want examples, I'm happy to provide them.
You had some legal challenges. How do you address those in a campaign?
All my legal challenges have been business related. I'm a businessman. Businessmen have legal issues, and in fact, for a businessman, I've only had 1 or 2 issues, and one of them just got a little out of hand with a partner who's like a brother to me, and he still is, and it just got out of hand, and the lawyers took control over the case. We wasted over $1 million, but now, thankfully, we're friends again. Not only that, we're still business partners, and even more so, we went out and acquired other businesses together and are making more money together than we ever did before. So I think it's actually a great story of reconciliation and the danger of what happens when lawyers get involved in people's personal affairs.
What would you be willing to spend in this election?
Do you mean me personally?
Yes.
Right now I'm contemplating that. I've already committed $500,000. I'll probably put in $1 million. That's where I'm at. It's about how the race unfolds. The goal right now is, like any campaign, to be a source of fundraising for the candidacy and a source of I guess, source of fundraising for the candidacy and potentially for other candidates down ballot if they're able to take advantage of some of the funds that I raise. Reach out to those same donors. I think, I think that's where I'm at right now. It's a fluid situation.
You would be willing to commit some of your personal.
I've already committed, like I said, $500,000 of my own personal money, and more to come. And I don't know if you know the Yiddish word schnorrer. I don't like to be a schnorrer. A schnorrer is a guy who's basically hitting his friends up. It's like wimpy. I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today, but he'll never pay you Tuesday, right? So when you're raising money for a campaign, you're basically going to friends and people and saying, giving me money for nothing. And when I ran last time, I returned all the money I raised. I raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some I deposited, some I just took the checks and mailed them back because I felt like I wasn't comfortable raising money and asking people for money. This is a different situation. If I felt that for $2 or $2.5 million I could run and win this campaign, I might not raise money. But thank God I do well. I'm not going to put $10 million into the race. But I think this is a race worth raising money for, and it's a race worth putting my own money into, and that's what I'm doing. I feel comfortable asking people for money in this race.
What would you say to a voter who maybe sees there's some alleged comments in your past, there's also, as Julie alluded to, some legal issues? That would give them pause, I guess. What would you say to a voter?
Again, all my issues are civil issues that were all settled. I haven't had many. I haven't had a single employee, for example, ever file a complaint. Think about that. That's a pretty powerful thing over 24 years. So my issues are big boy issues between me and other people who can afford expensive lawyers. And you know what happens when you can afford expensive lawyers and you're inexperienced and young? They take advantage of you. And that's what they did. They hustled us for $1 million. And I think it's not a real issue because my partners and the people who were in that fight are my partners today and my friends today. And I go to their kids' bar mitzvahs and I'm going to their nephews' weddings. I'm still friends and brothers. And I'm not happy about having been in a fight, I'll be honest. But I think, like I said before, it's a story more of reconciliation, and to be the kind of guy who can have a fight and then after that fight go back and be partners with that person and do more business with them, I think that's more compelling than the fight itself in some ways. I think so, and I lived up to that. Whether I'm a rotten guy or not, that doesn't matter. But what did I do at the end? At the end, I made up the guy, and I'm partners with him, and we sit at meetings together, and we're friends, and that's important.
Josh, no Republican has won statewide since 2002. Why is this year different for you?
I think Republicans will eventually win statewide office eventually, right? That's just a statistical fact. Like at some point, it will happen. And the demographics just overall, if you look at the polling, clearly younger people are more Republican than they have been over the last 15 or 20 years. The pendulum is swinging, and the Democrats have implemented a world of failed policies that right now are just no longer defensible. You can't defend a lot of the policies that they've put in place, and even they themselves, for example, with this insane zoning plan that they had where they were going to impose statewide zoning on local towns, they had to kind of pull themselves back and rein themselves in. We're not a socialist country. We're not a communist country. So if people are raising their hands and saying, I want to be a socialist where everybody's going to be equally poor, that's just not America. And I think the Democrats have painted themselves as those kinds of people. Kirsten Gillibrand sits idly by and allows extraordinarily failed programs like NYCHA and this business of closing the disabling people's ability to hook up new gas lines. These are crippling policies. And these kinds of regulations exist in all sorts of businesses. You speak to any business owner in New York and you speak to business owners in other states, and the regulations here are onerous. People might put up with the taxes. It's a great state. It's a lovely place to live. There are highways. There are airports. Okay, there's a lot to maintain. You need a tax. But the regulations, that's just too much. And it's driving people out.
Are you a supporter of Donald Trump for president?
right now I'm waiting to see how it plays out, and I'm waiting to see what policies people put out. I think we live in a world today where a lot of people are signaling and pointing to where they might stand and what they might do, and I'm waiting to see who's got real ideas. I know I have some real ideas, and I'm happy to have a long-form conversation with anybody here, or even do it here if you just let me put on my hat, because it's cold. But I think I've thought about a lot of these ideas. I understand the law. I have a PhD in religion and legal theory. I've studied constitutional law. I spent 3 years on a fellowship in a law school, if you believe that education matters. But beyond that, I've spent hundreds of hours, probably thousands of hours, really studying these issues, studying the law, and I think you'd be pretty surprised to hear what the law would allow for today, and how easy it is to write certain laws that would just make people's lives so much easier, and make government smaller, and make communities stronger, and make people happier.
People here in Buffalo, I understand you've been going all over the state, right, the last couple of days?
Yeah, I'll be driving all over the place.
I guess, how does a downstate businessman relate to upstate people?
I think human beings are human beings, and I've been around the state, but I've also been around the world. I've been to Ukraine in the middle of the war, I've been in India, I've been all over Europe. I've traveled around, and while we might feel like we're very different, Buffalo, New York, Boston, we're still all Americans. There's a lot of things that we share in common. I mean, essentially you walk around Buffalo, it's not that different than New York City. Essentially, you'll really feel that if you go to Ukraine, if you go to Poland, if you go to India, you go to Sri Lanka, you go to Dubai, you go to other places around the world, and you realize, wow, we're Americans, we're all so similar. Our problems are so similar, and thankfully, our problems aren't that great. They're relatively easy to solve. We're the wealthiest nation in the history of nations, and we're at the wealthiest moment we've ever been in as a nation. So we should be able to solve a lot of these problems. We're certainly running around all over the world solving other problems, and I'm not making a commentary about the degree to which we should be dealing with those problems, but there's no doubt that we can handle a lot of the problems that exist downstate and upstate, and at the end, they're about people's happiness that stem from their ability to run their businesses, live their lives, just do the things they need to do, be able to go to the grocery store and afford things. A lot of the issues that are up here are down there and around the country, and they're very different than the issues that exist, for example, let's say in Israel or Ukraine or Sri Lanka or Poland or wherever else in the world. And I think we should appreciate how much we have in common and how similar we are as New Yorkers and as Americans.
What do you think the biggest issue in Western New York would be for you? What have you identified as the main issue that you would like to address in Western New York?
On a macro level, as you've heard me say multiple times, I think the main issue is government intrusion and regulation, way more so than taxes. I think that just needs to be ameliorated. I think the counties and the towns need to be able to make decisions for themselves and decide how they're going to teach their kids in the school, decide how they're going to handle their electricity, how they're going to handle their energy. I think towns and counties need to be empowered, and that is certainly where my values are. In terms of specifics, clearly, if the towns and the counties were given a little bit more power, I think just that alone would ameliorate and help out with issues such as crime. Certainly I know the migrant crisis is an issue up here that people are very concerned about, but that's also, as to your point earlier, it's an issue that we have downstate. It's a national issue. It's an issue we all share in common, and it's something that we need to figure out together. I mean, they're here now. I don't know, this is a complicated issue for Republicans because I'm not just a Republican, I consider myself a man of faith. I believe in God. I'm a religious man, and I was taught that religious people can't just walk by a mother and a child who are cold and hungry and do nothing. And I was never taught to ask for people's papers before I was charitable with them. So it's very complicated for me, that issue. But yeah, those are, I hope that answers your question, more macro, and then specifically those, crime, migrants, I mean, what a lot of the politicians will say to you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.